Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment friendly public transportation. In today's episode of Railway Transportation Systems, we are excited to welcome Tim Noonan, the founder and CEO of Evertrak. Since founding the company in 2017, Tim has led Evertrak in revolutionizing the railway industry with innovative, sustainable solutions, particularly focusing on railroad ties. His company's flagship product, the Evertrak 7000, is a glass fiber reinforced composite railroad tie made from the recycled plastic, already trusted by Class 1 railroads with over 100,000 installations. Tim is a passionate advocate for environmental sustainability, preventing deforestation, and transforming plastic recycling, all while fostering a team driven culture of innovation and care. Join us as we dive into the journey and advancements Evertrack is making to create a greener future for the railway industry. Hi, Tim. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Raman. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm really glad that you are here and the work you're doing is really appreciable. Thanks for coming on this pod and sharing your insights with us.
You're welcome.
Tim, let's start with the first question. Can you tell us about your journey that led to the founding of Evertrack in 2017?
Thanks for that, Raman. My journey, I think I've always been somewhat entrepreneurial in that my previous career, I worked at the Boeing company. And at Boeing, I had great pleasure of leading teams that commercialize technologies for the company. So we would take different technologies. We would most importantly find teams of passionate entrepreneurs that exist inside every large organization. And we would run small experiments and launch products. We launched an energy business out of Boeing. We had the great fortune of starting a ventures business as well. In St. Louis, Missouri, where I live, which is in the middle part of the United States, it's the convergence of 5 Class 1 railroads there. I also had done some private investing and had invested in a plastic recycling company in St. Louis. When I retired from Boeing in 2017, we looked at, what we could do with the plastic. We asked ourselves a basic question, which is, what are products that plastic goes into where we could potentially be able to solve a problem and make a product? One of the things that we landed on was railroad ties. We noticed that there was not an alternative to wooden railroad ties. Cross ties are also known as sleepers, I know, in your part of the world. And we looked at the challenge that was being faced by the companies that had tried to start those companies. And we had one insight, and that was that the railroad needed a railroad tie that was as strong as wood, not as cheap as wood. And from there, we formulated a glass fiber reinforced composite using recycled plastic, and we were able to replicate the strength and stiffness of wood sleepers or cross ties or railroad ties to meet the specifications of the railroads here in the United States.
Wow, great innovation. I think the idea is amazing. We do need people like you who think outside the box, Tim. So what inspired you to focus specifically on revolutionizing railroad ties, which is sleepers in outside US world, a segment that hasn't changed much since the Civil War?
Raman, what we saw, one thing is that, we had a problem in our recycling business in that we wanted to move from selling plastic as a commodity and move it into a differentiated product or differentiated part. The second piece that we noticed was, while wood railroad ties, wooden sleepers are predominantly used in the United States industry and all over the world, the world's running out out of old growth tree. And what you see in the United States is for Class 1 railroads, and the installed base is approximately 500 million railroad ties, that there are 4 to 6 million sleepers or cross ties that are being replaced in less than 12 years. The reason that they're being replaced in less than 12 years in the southeastern part of the United States is that new growth trees, no matter what they're treated with, whether it's creosote or borate or copper naphthalene, there's no combination of species and chemicals that can stand up to the humidity, the bugs, and the moisture associated with these regions in the United States. It was lesser a problem 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 50 years ago because we had plenty of 100-year-old trees, of old growth trees. We've run out of those trees in the United States. We've run out of those trees all over the world. For example, in the rainforest of Brazil, deforestation is happening to make oil plantations, and you can use mahogany to make a railroad tie if you want. It's a terrible idea when there's a forest of plastic right outside our door, and we can collect that plastic, mix it with advanced composites, and engineer a product that's just as strong as a wood tie, but in these use cases can last 50 years.
Amazing product. I know, not just thinking outside the box or bringing some innovation in rail industry, I could see that there would be some great challenges in bringing this product into the market. How did you do that?
We had an appreciation for is that, as I mentioned, I retired from the Boeing company where I had the honor of serving as a vice president in a very, very sophisticated safety of life business that had certain policies and procedures that exist to ensure that there's safety of life for all the folks that use our product. The railroad's very similar. Bureaucracies exist for a reason. They allow big organizations to solve very complex problems as efficiently as possible. I'm fond of saying that you wouldn't want to crowdsource spaceship that heads to the moon. You want to make sure that there are tens of thousands of engineers that are working on that project. But what can happen as well is that you can get really stuck in your decision making, and there are many entrenched interests in the supply chain. And if you have a certain way of doing things, it doesn't matter what it is. We've all got these habits in our life. It can be hard to find a new way to do things. So we really realized with this customer, we had to be very, very patient, and we had to let the product speak for itself. So we knew that we had probably 3 to 5 years of heavy duty product development ahead of us, mostly in terms of testing and allowing the product to speak for itself. The reason that we knew our tie would last as long as it did is that we brought some engineering practices that are very well known in aerospace, including finite element model testing. Something doesn't have to work for 50 years to know that it'll last for 50 years. So we built a product we knew that was the right product. We built the best team that we could of engineers. We attracted the best team of investors and board members. We're very honored that one of our former board members is Jim Vena, the CEO, current CEO of Union Pacific. And we played a very, very long game because we know that we had a very, very big problem to solve. And if we get it right, our product's going to be in use 50 years from now. So working with your customer, the other thing that we had to do, Rahman, is that we had to shift the conversation from price to value. So sleepers, railroad ties are a commodity. They are relatively inexpensive compared to a composite tie. So we had to work with our customers and explain that when you're able to purchase on value based on total cost of ownership and not price, what does that mean? Well, it means that you've got the cost of the tie, you've got the cost of installing the tie, you've got the cost associated with disposing of the wood tie, and then you have to look and do some discounted math and say, well, if you're doing that every 7 or 8 years and you repeat that cycle 4 or 5 times over 30 or 40 years, what's the impact? That requires required that we built a tremendous amount of trust with our customer. So it hasn't been easy, but we're thrilled that we've had very, very innovative customers who've been open to having these conversations. And I think there's a couple leading the way, like Union Pacific in particular.
Wow. How long do your sleepers last?
We're hesitant to say how long they last, but here's what we do know. Union Pacific has told us that our product meets their requirement, and their expectation is that our product lasts 50 years.
Wow.
I would look at it differently and say, what failure modes are introduced that could result in the tie having a failure? So some of the failure modes that we've taken away is bugs and moisture, because bugs, our tie is impervious to termite, our tie is impervious to moisture and all the rotting associated with it. So then it comes down to structural forces. We've engineered our tie to be over 7,000 pounds per square inch modulus of rupture and over 400,000 psi modulus of elasticity. So the bending without breaking forces, in our experience, if the ballast conditions are maintained, the tie should be very, very stable over time. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to get anomaly ballast conditions. You're not going to have conditions where the tie break, but from our understanding, even at the test track out with MXV in Pueblo, Colorado, with the United States Federal Railroad Administration, our tie had less than 3% failure over 650 million gross tons of load. So it's a hard question to answer, how long will it last? But we're confident that with the right ballast conditions that are maintained, installed correctly, that you will get multiple cycles relative to wood.
Wow, amazing answer, Tim. I know you said earlier as well, your ties or sleepers are made from recycled plastic and glass fiber. Can you share more about the material science behind this innovation?
Yeah, so glass fiber and plastic have been, working together for decades. Many products, fiberglass is very, very common. A place in particular to look, for example, is in car parts. Many car parts, sails, boat hulls, fishing rods. Fiberglass is a very, very common material. Our insight was that when you're dealing with recycled plastic, you've got a wide specification of plastic. Virgin plastic has a very, very tight specification, especially associated with its polymer chain. When you're using recycled plastic, you might have a plastic that's been melted and cooled once, or you might have a plastic that's been melted and cooled 5 or 6 or 7 times. The more times the plastic is melted and cooled, the shorter the polymer chains get. So when you have shorter polymer chains, you can have a different underlying constituent material. We found a glass fiber that we can introduce that bonds with the polymer to create uncommon strength and stiffness. The best way to think about it is rebar in concrete. You add rebar into concrete and it creates strength and stiffness. So the key is that we get uniform distribution of the glass fiber throughout the matrix of the tie, which is something that we do with our intellectual property. When you get this glass fiber evenly distributed in 3 dimensions, you create a composite, which, by definition, composite is 2 dissimilar materials coming together to give you properties that are better than either apart. So you get, literally 1 + 1 = 3, where the plastic by itself has a strength and stiffness. The glass by itself has no strength or stiffness. You put them together and you get something incredibly strong and stiff.
Amazing idea. Now I know that there are over 100,000 installations of your Evertrak ties. What has the feedback been like from Class 1 railroads?
Well, one of the things we're most proud of, and one of our values that we talk about, one of our beliefs, we talk about trust. And when we say trust, we tell ourselves that we let our customer measure how good we are. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. It only matters how good your customer thinks you are. When Union Pacific asked if they could talk about what we were doing, we were thrilled. And they talked about having a problem in the high decay zones of the southeastern part of the United States. They talked about Evertrak being a product that can last 50 years. And what we've seen from Union Pacific and other class ones is an appetite for composites. And I think the reason that the appetite in the moment is now is there's a generational problem with wood in the United States. There are no more trees that are 100 years old. When you have a 100-year-old tree, you get rings that are very hard wood. Those species don't exist anymore. And
Yeah.
I think the railroads have finally reached a point where they're seeing the impact of what happens when they have to replace 10 to 12% of their railroad in the southeastern part of the United States. It's simply unsustainable. It's expensive, dirty. The labor and the machines don't exist. And from a balance sheet impact, cross ties are depreciated over 30 years. But if they become non-operational after 10, you have an impaired asset that you have to take a charge on your balance sheet again. So in the era of precision scheduled railroading that's happening in the United States, uptime matters on these networks. So I think this is a real moment for the railroads where they're recognizing that this most basic aspect of their road, cross ties, we can bring innovation to.
Yeah, you did actually. And the great innovation. Let's talk about sustainability. Can you walk us through the sustainability impact of using Evertrak ties versus traditional wooden ties, and also compare with the latest concrete ties?
Taking the second part first, wood railroad ties or sleepers are very specific for the U.S. market. If you're doing a tie for tie replacement program, very seldom, if ever, would you replace a wood tie, a wood sleeper with concrete. So the installed base in the United States, what's required is a railroad tie that is interoperable with a wood tie. And I think that is incredibly important for the railroads, recognizing that you have to have that interoperability with wood. What we found is that, in the United States, there's 3,250 wood ties per mile and about 140,000 freight miles of railroad track. From a sustainability point of view, you really have to keep in mind that wood ties come from trees, and trees are used for a number of different things. They're used for telephone poles, they're used for cross ties, they're used for the construction industry. But at scale, with 20 million wood ties replaced every year, that's about 250,000 trees that are being cut down that can be replaced with a forest of plastic that exists, right outside our door. At 1 million railroad ties a year, and we think for the problem that we solve in the market where we are, we think there's 4 to 6 million ties that can be made out of composite versus wood. So 1 million ties, as I mentioned, 1 million ties is 250,000 trees. With that type of demand signal, 1 million ties would sequester 180 million pounds of plastic annually. And I think why that's important is that, in the United States, we only recycle about 8% of all the plastic that is used every year. The world is not running out of plastic. We're going to keep using plastic for everything from, single-use plastic to our bags. We have to create demand signals for use of plastic. If not, we're just going to be awash in plastic. So we don't talk about, our belief is that you want to take that carbon molecule and you want to sequester it until someone figures out what to do with it. Our belief is in 50 years or 100 years, some smart person is going to figure out what to do with the carbon molecule. And if that's the case, they're going to want to go to plastic mine. Where are plastic mines going to be? They're going to be railroads. You're going to have millions of tons of plastic sitting right at grade that can be harvested for those carbon molecules. And hopefully in 50 or 100 years, someone will come up with a different railroad tie that they can use. The other piece that goes into this too is that, when you cut down a tree, you treat it with cancer-causing creosote. The creosote leaches into the ground. You pull the tie out. The railroad has to pay to get rid of that tie. And there's only two places it can go. It can either be incinerated, which has a CO2 impact, or it can be put in a landfill, which has a CO2 impact. So, again, our idea is that with a forest of plastic outside our door and a big at-scale problem, we can start to stimulate demand for recycled plastic. Stimulating demand will stimulate supply, and we can create a much more virtuous circle around plastic.
Wow, great analysis. Actually, I was about to ask you about the recycling, however, you covered it. Now, the other important aspect is people. How were your early days of Evertrak like, and how did you build the team that you often credit with driving innovation?
Yeah, it's a great question. Another one of our beliefs is the team, the team, the team. Having been fortunate to have a long career in Boeing, and prior to that, I had the great honor of serving in the United States Marine Corps, is that, what you realize is that teams are what matter. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team. And we were able to attract like-minded people who shared our vision for where we wanted to go. And this is at every level, from our investors to our board members to our leadership team, all the way to the front line. And another thing that we found is that a large proportion of our workforce in St. Louis are formerly incarcerated citizens. So, another one of our beliefs is respect, and we like to say is that we need to see the best in people. We need to assume good intentions, and none of us should be judged for the worst decisions we've ever made in our life. And so, one of the things that we ask of our team, that I say to my team, every single person, is that we're all precious children of God, every single one of us. And to get love and respect, you don't need to do anything to get love and respect. That's how we roll. We're not going to love and respect you anymore because you do a good job. We're not going to love and respect you anymore because you show up on time. You get a paycheck for showing up on time. You get a paycheck for doing your job. And so what we have found is that for a lot of the people, and again, this is particular to the United States economic system, the United States view of capitalism, is that private business has an important role to play in lifting people up, an important role to play for people to find dignity and meaning at work. And we try to bring that forward in what we do. So, from how we talk about business to hopefully how we lift people up at work, we're trying to make a positive difference in the world.
And you will make, Tim. Wow, I have seen a great leader in you, a great leadership. I think your team is really clearly lucky to have a leader like you. Moving forward
I'm
with...
going to pause you right there. Not true. I'm fortunate to have that. We're all in this together.
Correct. See, that's what I was appreciating you. Great leadership. What is Evertrak's vision for the future, and how do you see your company further transforming railway infrastructure?
Well, we have a vision of infrastructure in the United States that rolls on a foundation of recycled plastic or recycled composite railroad ties made from recycled plastic. We believe, and this is something to really hit, Rahman, is that good startups that survive, always focus on solving a problem. They don't seek opportunity; they solve a problem. There has to be a clear pain point if your startup's going to survive. And our Class 1 railroads have a problem. They have a pain point. There's 4 to 6 million wooden railroad ties that are rotting out underneath their steel every year. We want to be a painkiller to that pain point. I believe that Evertrak's role is to stimulate this industry to take up the use of composite ties, to work with the startups in this segment like Evertrak. And, I envision and I really believe that within 5 years, we can be supplying at least 1 million ties a year in the segment in the United States. And I also believe that this similar problem exists all over the world. I know it exists in Australia. I know it exists in the United Kingdom. I know it exists in Europe. I know it exists in India. I know that it exists in South America and it exists in Africa. And the interesting aspect of this is not only can we provide a product, we can also bring a capability that becomes a vacuum for all this plastic that exists everywhere We can even in countries not developed as economically as the United States, the technology is straightforward enough that we could create a workforce that could create these railroad ties, that could use these sleepers and these ties in their local markets. And I believe that we're going to have a real shot on goal to make this a global product in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I believe so. And I wish you all the best for the future. And it's a great vision, Tim. Can you also share some of the key milestones Evertrack has achieved since its inception?
Yes, I'm happy to. I think the first milestone was the insight that industry needed a railroad tie that was as strong as wood, not as cheap as wood. So we put our engineering talent on focusing on strength, not price. I think that was, or strength, not cost, that equates to price. I think that was one. I think a second significant milestone was when we had the good fortune of getting our ties in with all of the Class 1 railroads with enough scale that we were able to recognize that our tie actually could be handled and could be worked. I think a third significant milestone was passing 650 million gross tons at the test track an MXV in Pueblo, Colorado. And then I think a fourth milestone was when we moved to our new factory in St. Louis, where we have the capacity to manufacture 300,000 ties a year. And I think it's really important that, we continue to focus that, cross ties and sleepers will continue to be a commodity. There's going to be, which means to win at scale, you've got to keep driving down cost. Our customers expect that we drive down cost. I think it's this, you think about your flat screen TV 10 years ago, very expensive. Flat screen TV today, not so expensive. That's because you get economies of scale. You get you increase your manufacturing efficiency. You get better leverage with your suppliers. You get long-term contracts. So this last piece is really about how do we get to scale with kind of the next generation manufacturing capacity that I know we're capable of.
Wow. Tim, then what's next for Evertrack in terms of product development or new partnerships? And where do you see the company heading in the next 5 years?
That's a great question, Ram. And one of the things that I know is that success attracts competition, and we're very excited to have competition in this space. Because I think we have a better point of view, we have a better team, we have a better approach to the market. Innovation is going to keep us ahead. So what does that mean? Innovation means good ideas turned into value. We can engineer a railroad tie that will continue to be stronger, the strongest in the market at the lowest price that's the most affordable. We've got to continue to do that. So I imagine that we will move forward with product development, and we will start offering the next generation Evertrak tie. I believe that we will have the ability to continue to work with the leading roads that are out there. One of the things that we're very excited about and thrilled about is that we are creating a railroad tie transformation team. So currently Brent Lang, who is the former chief engineer at Canadian National, and Ricky Johnson, who's the former chief engineer at CSX, they've joined our team at Evertrak. Those type of legacy railroaders who've seen it all, they know the problems that exist. They're going to help us continue to validate our product. And we are going to stay ahead of the competition by ensuring that we've got tremendous customer trust, and our customer measures how good we are by continuing to install Evertrak railroad ties.
Well, I wish you all the best, and I'm pretty sure you would reach there. Anyways, thanks for your time, Tim. And before I let you go, I want one piece of advice to the new startups. Like, you picked a great idea, innovation, and you developing a sustainable product. Is there any feedback you want to give to the new startups who wants to bring innovative ideas to this industry?
I think the number one item is ensure that your product is a painkiller and not a vitamin. So what I mean by that is that your product has to make a problem go away for your customer. There's an old saying that I like, which is a problem solved with money is not a problem. You have to find a problem that isn't solved with money, because if it can be solved with money, your customer will solve it. You have to focus on what a real pain point is and then give your customer a pathway to wanting to use your product to make your pain go away. That is probably the most important aspect. And then you have to really know that startups are hard. They're incredibly hard. I have a friend, his name's David Kidder. He likes to say that people like babies and they like world-class athletes. Everything in between are kind of tough. So startups are like babies. These products that are at scale are Olympic athletes. You got to live through some very, very hard years getting your product to market, and don't change course. Be very, very stubborn on your vision. Be flexible on the execution. But a big mistake startups make is that they get 90% done and they're about to, push it in and push it over the goal line, and they meet this resistance and they decide to start something else. Stay relentlessly focused. I think that's one of the things that we did well at Evertrak is that we only offered one product, a standard railroad tie, 7 by 9 inches profile by 8.5 to 10 feet long. We didn't get distracted by chasing any other products. So solve a problem, be a painkiller, not a vitamin, and then optionality kills startups. Stick with your product and push it across the finish line.
Wow, amazing advice. And thank you for your time today, Tim.
You're welcome, Rahman. Thank you very much.
I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry, contact me on railway transportation systems at gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. See you next fortnight. Until then, stay safe and take care of yourself.